first off by, on behalf of Brother Rini and our principal, David DiFilippo, by thanking you for coming tonight. It's great to see so many of you, and we have, I think, a really great message, which we hope you're receptive to tonight. I want to thank Dan Gibson, who is not here tonight, for his willingness to be our campaign chair. My thanks to Coach Adamopoulos, Chuck, to Liz, who I think spoke so very eloquently earlier today. Let's have another round of applause for him. And to Tom Burkhart, who's doing a great job as Master of Ceremonies. This is his second version of this. This could end up being a permanent job, Tom. You're doing this
2 years, buddy.
Who's counting, right? I love your story. I have one, and do you notice how so many of these stories have 3 guys in them? Like, what's that about? So these 3 construction workers used to they're building a huge skyscraper in an urban setting, and they would take their lunch up in the upper story, when they get their lunch break, up in the upper stories of this somewhat completed building. And at lunch one day, one of the 3 guys opens his lunch pail, and he looks and he says, "Meatball sandwich again. If I get a meatball sandwich one more day, I'm throwing myself off this building." The guy next to him opens his lunch, looks and says, "Tuna sandwich again. If I get a tuna sandwich one more day, I'm going to jump off this building too." And the 3rd guy opens his lunch and says, "Peanut butter and jelly. If I get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich one more time, I'm going off the building." Well, the next day, they're back together, same spot. First guy opens his lunch. With a look of absolute horror, he says, "Meatball sandwich." And he jumps off the building. So the next guy opens his lunch, looks, with a complete look of depression on his face, says, "Tuna salad." And he goes off the building. You see where this is going. The 3rd guy opens his lunch, opens it, peanut butter and jelly. He does a swan dive. Now, about 2 days later, there are 3 different wakes going on where these men are being laid out. And the first widow is overheard saying, "If only I knew that it was all about the lunch. I could have done something. I'd have made him, roast beef." Similarly, at the second wake, the widow is heard saying, "If only I knew that he was so upset with his lunches, I'd have done something different." At the 3rd wake, the widow says, I did everything I could, but he made his own lunches." Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing the lengths that we will sometimes go to avoid change? And yet, I don't know about you, it seems to me in the last 30 years, maybe longer, all we hear, it's almost cliche, is what a rapidly changing world we live in. And it seems to me also as if the pace of change, maybe it's just that I'm getting older, the pace seems to accelerate. At Central Catholic, that's the world that we're preparing young men and women to live in and to succeed in. We have great teachers. You heard Chuck. I'm sure over the years you've met many of them. Many of them, as Tom said, are here tonight. They do a spectacular job. They give our kids the spiritual orientation and all of the other skills that they need to be successful in life and to live decent lives and good lives and productive lives. That's what this campaign is about. We must do everything within our power to provide our teachers with the tools they need to do the best job possible. One of the things we hope that will happen as a result of this campaign is to elevate the level of annual fund giving. The annual fund is the lifeblood of so many of our programs, extracurricular programs, curricular, that our kids depend on. The quality, the potential of the quality to rise is directly linked to the success of the annual fund. And doing that, while at the same time restraining increases in tuition. We could, as some schools do, take the mindset we're going to give our kids the very best and we're going to charge the highest price in order to make that happen. That is not our philosophy and it's not our mission. So we're constantly struggling with how do we improve while keeping the cost as affordable as possible. The annual fund is critical to that. 30% of our students at Central Catholic are on some form of financial aid. I mentioned this for those of you who were at our event back on September 24th. 30%. And for about 6% of our students, a Central Catholic high school education would not even be imaginable were it not for the fact that we are offsetting the vast majority of the costs of that education, the tuition and fees, through our Montagna project. This campaign is about keeping those opportunities available, and it's about growing our endowment. Because just as the annual fund is the lifeblood of so many of our programs and the quality of our instruction, the endowment is a critical source of financial aid. Critical. And as we look to the future, our expectations are the needs will only grow. So the necessity for us to grow the endowment. Over $1.25 million this year in financial aid. It's a huge commitment on the part of the school. Shortly after I arrived this summer, our assistant principal, Chris Sullivan, again, someone I think most of you know, came to see me about a young man that he had met during the summer. A young guy who desperately wanted to attend Central Catholic. The boy and his family, well, the boy's family are immigrants. He's first generation American. Not savvy on administration, procedures, admissions procedures. So this was coming sort of very late in the cycle. But Chris sat and told me that morning, Tom, this is a wonderful kid. He's hardworking. He's got a lot of potential. Everyone who knows him says this about him. He's enthusiastic. As Chris said to me that day, this is a Central kid. We have to find a place for him. Chris also warned me that the family had very, very meager financial resources. They will not be able to pay much of the tuition, he told me. So if we took this kid, we'd be making a huge investment. And by August, pretty much the funds that we had for the Montagna project for this year were committed. Well, I think those of you who know me know that when it comes to our kids, it is very hard for me to say no. And it's especially hard for me to say no to someone like Chris Sullivan, who knows our kids so well and cares about our kids so deeply, as so many of our people do. The short version of this is that we scrambled over